what I was excited about was the idea of working as a psychologist with a creative team and seeing how we could understand the creative process from a psychological perspective. I was very keen on understanding the audience's perception about how that could then feed back into the creative process somehow.
There is a thought about the audience as time goes on, what they've got used to, what they might expect, how far we might want to change that. Those are thoughts, but it's not something that shapes the work and the creative process, I'd say.
And I thought it was very interesting what you were saying about being moved by people who say to you what they feel when they dance. Because something gets stuck at some point in our moving pattern. The observation was you move too fast, you walk too slowly. It's all functional in relation to an activity, to something you are about to perform, or how you relate to people socially. So I started taking photographs of my daughter, from which I made paintings. When I was trying to work out why things were the way they were in the paintings and in the photograph, I always felt that what was missing here was movement. So I became very interested in the way people stand and what postures they take and so on. And what I worked out really is that it's about how the children stand in a way that adults never do. Their poses and their relationships to the camera is totally different from their poses and expressions of grown-ups. And I thought that the difference lied in the different levels of self-awareness between adults and children. And I wonder where all that moving goes, that is such an important part of our growing up, and we don't consider it in normal circumstances.
The importance of rhythm in music and movement is very closely related. Rhythm gives movement a pulse, a point of reference to which the body can react. So for me anyway, these precise movements are usually reduced or limited physically to the hands and arms, is really reduced to a micro world, as opposed to Russell, does bigger movements. And so last June in 2009, Russell asked me to create a new work based on his choreography, to which he needed a new musical piece. I wanted to quote Tim Robbins, who said, "Emotion is created by motion." Because in this case, I was able to tailor a new emotionally moving piece. In a way, emotion was created by motion. The motion was first, and then my composition came after. To some extent, we might say music is created by motion, at least when circumstance and purpose are preconditioned.
I was missing having something that I find fantastic to work with musically. Mm-hmm. So wouldn't it be better to go to Oscar and say, can you write something that's more appropriate, more shaped? And then he wrote that. And it's great to work in the show every day.
I wonder whether when you're improvising to music which you find really inspiring, that you would do more different things each night with each performance, because you would find different aspects of the music to work with and move with. Yeah. Whereas when you're moving and improvising to a piece of music that is less inspiring, that has an impact on has a less improvisatory quality to it. To what extent is it the dance movements themselves per se which generate this emotional response? And to what extent is it the music? So how much can we kind of partial out statistically those different effects to find out what the core emotion is?
Clearly you experiment all the time. I mean, you wouldn't say I do it in a scientific way, but you do, because you're very careful with not changing.
Systematic.
Yeah. The major difference, as I always say when I talk about projects in art and science, is that you don't write your experiments down. whereas Peter does. It's part of the ethos of being an artist and being a scientist. Artists are.
I don't measure them.
You don't measure them.
Really.
No.
I make a choice.
Yeah.
It's better or worse. Kind of, that takes it this way. That's more appropriate to where we want to go. So we'll make a decision.
Well, one of the major differences between the kind of creative process and the scientific process is that in a scientific process we can have 4 conditions in experiments, and we can predict that in condition 1 everyone will love it. Condition 4 everybody walks out of the room. But of course it would be professional suicide for you to set your career up in that way. So you have this kind of commerciality in some sense associated with the creative process. You need to play safe, but then push the boundaries so that you can challenge your audiences without turning them off completely.
What we do is also very much subjective. I'm mostly an interpreter of composed music already. I know I cannot please everyone in the public audience, and there will be people who prefer another style or interpretation, so there will always be, to some extent, some kind of controversy between people, and because there's so many tastes.
Already we're putting together 2 methods, ways of working, and
totally,
completely
I think this
different.
is more an approach of a kind of globalization, a kind of approach to see what is the most successful or acceptable product that I can offer that everybody will more or less like, which takes away the individuality of the artist.
Part of the relationship, I think, between an artist and an audience is that you're trying to attract like-minded, aesthetically minded people to the craft that you're working with. We're not going to change what we do. They're not going to change what they like.
We can shape our audience in a way also. And the other approach would be, in this case, allowing the audience to shape us.